Cleaner is fired after asking for Keanu Reeves' autograph. The actor's reaction shocks everyone. The morning sun was still low in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over the luxury hotel where Maria worked. She had been cleaning rooms at this upscale hotel for several years, finding joy in the little things. It wasn't just the pay. It was the satisfaction of a job well done and the quiet moments when she could step back and admire her work. The hotel was known for hosting celebrities, dignitaries, and wealthy travelers, and Maria always tried to make sure everything was perfect, even though she knew she wasn't a part of their world. Maria had always admired Keanu Reeves. She had grown up watching his movies, especially The Matrix and John Wick. Keanu wasn't just another Hollywood star to her. She loved the way he carried himself, humble, kind, and down-to-earth. It was said that Keanu often went out of his way to do something good for others, whether it was quietly helping out a coworker or making generous donations to charities. His reputation for being a genuinely good person was something Maria respected greatly. The day had started like any other, with Maria arriving at the hotel early in the morning to begin her shift. She wore her uniform, a simple outfit consisting of a beige shirt and navy blue pants, and carried her cleaning supplies in a small cart as she walked down the hallways. The hotel had a timeless, classic feel: ornate chandeliers, polished marble floors, and large windows that let in just enough light to make everything sparkle. It was the kind of place that made you feel important just by being there. It was during her routine cleaning shift that Maria first saw the name on the guest list, Keanu Reeves. Her heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe it. She had heard that he would be visiting for a promotional event in town, but she never imagined he would be staying at her hotel. She paused for a moment in the hallway, staring at the guest list on her clipboard. Keanu Reeves was just down the hall. The thought made her nervous and excited all at once. Her mind raced. What if she bumped into him in the hallway? What if he came across her while she was cleaning his room? She smiled to herself at the thought, but then quickly reminded herself that she was just a cleaner. She had no right to approach him, even if she admired him from afar. After all, celebrities like Keanu were always surrounded by people and security. They didn't have time for the likes of her. But as the day went on, Maria's nerves and excitement grew. Every time she passed by his door, she couldn't help but glance at the number on the door, room 312. She imagined what it would be like if she actually saw him. Would she say something? Would she be able to keep calm? Would he even notice her? Then, just as her shift was coming to an end, Maria was assigned to clean room 312. She froze. For a moment, she thought the universe had conspired to put her in the right place at the right time. But she was also terrified. This was Keanu Reeves's room. She would be in the same space as him. She reminded herself to stay calm, do her job, and not let the excitement get in the way. As she entered the room with her cleaning cart, the door was slightly ajar. The hotel staff often left it open for safety reasons, especially when a VIP guest was in residence. Maria stepped inside quietly, trying her best not to disturb the peaceful ambience of the room. The space was immaculate, with sleek, modern furniture, large windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, and soft lighting that added a touch of warmth. She slowly began to work, tidying up the room, dusting off the surfaces, and making the bed. Her heart raced, but she kept her focus on the task at hand. She moved as quietly as possible, wanting to finish quickly and avoid any awkwardness. She tried not to imagine Keanu walking in at any moment, but it was impossible. He was just a few steps away. She glanced at the clock. In a couple of hours, he would be leaving for his event, and the chance to see him would be gone. She was almost finished with the room when she heard the sound of the door opening. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She turned around, her hands trembling as she grabbed the dusting cloth from the table. There, standing in the doorway, was Keanu Reeves himself. He was wearing a simple black jacket and jeans, looking effortlessly cool, just like in the movies. His warm smile immediately put Maria at ease, but her nerves were still running high. "Hello," Keanu said with a gentle tone. "Thank you for keeping the room so nice. It's beautiful in here." Maria froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. She wasn't used to talking to someone as famous as him, let alone having a conversation. She managed to gather her thoughts and replied, "It's my job, sir. I'm happy to help." Keanu nodded, his smile widening. "Well, you're doing a great job. It's nice to see people take pride in their work." Maria felt a sense of warmth from his words. This wasn't just any celebrity. Keanu was genuinely kind, just like she had heard. The conversation was brief but meaningful, and just as she was about to continue with her cleaning, she made a split-second decision. "Mr. Reeves," she said softly, almost nervously, "would it be all right if I asked for your autograph? I've admired your work for so many years." Keanu looked at her for a moment, his smile never fading. He seemed to consider it, and Maria's heart pounded as she waited for his response. She wasn't sure what she expected. Maybe he would say he was too busy, or maybe he would say no. But instead, Keanu nodded and pulled out a pen from his jacket pocket. "Of course," he said. Maria couldn't believe it. The moment she had dreamed of was happening. She watched in awe as Keanu wrote his autograph on a small piece of paper she had quickly found in her pocket. As he handed it back to her, their fingers brushed, and Maria could feel her heart racing. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. Keanu smiled again, his kind eyes locking with hers. "You're welcome. Thank you for making the room so nice. I hope you have a good day." With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Maria standing there in disbelief. She held the piece of paper in her hands, staring at the autograph. It was more than just a signature. It was a symbol of a moment she would never forget. Maria took a deep breath and returned to her cleaning, her heart still racing from the interaction. She couldn't stop smiling. This had been the highlight of her entire career. It wasn't just about the autograph. It was about meeting someone she had admired for so long, someone who turned out to be just as kind and genuine as she had hoped. But little did she know, this simple interaction would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. The next day, Maria arrived at work earlier than usual, her mind still racing from the unexpected encounter with Keanu Reeves the day before. She had spent the evening staring at the autograph he had signed for her, a small piece of paper with his name carefully written in black ink. It felt like a dream. But as she stepped into the hotel that morning, her excitement started to fade, replaced by the familiar routine of cleaning. The hotel was bustling as usual. Guests checked in and out, and staff moved quickly to get everything ready for the day. Maria gathered her cleaning supplies, determined to do her job as best as she could. Despite the excitement from the day before, she pushed it aside and focused on her work, keeping her attention on the task at hand. But things started to feel different as soon as she entered the break room. There was a noticeable tension in the air. Maria noticed that the other staff members were whispering among themselves, their voices low, as if they were talking about something important. She tried not to pay attention, but her curiosity got the best of her. As she made her way to the coffee machine, she overheard bits and pieces of the conversation. "Did you hear what happened with Maria and Mr. Reeves?" one of the housekeepers whispered. "I can't believe she asked him for an autograph. What was she thinking?" another replied. Maria's heart sank as she realized they were talking about her. She tried to shake off the unease, but it lingered in the back of her mind. Why were they talking about her like that? What had gone wrong? She had only asked for an autograph because she had admired Keanu for so long. It wasn't like she had done anything wrong. Still, she couldn't help but feel a sense of embarrassment. As she made her way to the manager's office, she could sense that something was off. The manager, a stern and no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Harris, was sitting behind her desk, scribbling notes in a notebook. When she saw Maria enter, she looked up with an unreadable expression. "Maria, come in," Mrs. Harris said, her tone not as warm as usual. "We need to talk." Maria's stomach twisted in knots. The room suddenly felt much smaller, and her hands began to sweat. She had never been called into the office before, and she wasn't sure what to expect. Had something gone wrong with her cleaning? Did they find a mistake? Or was it something else? Maria sat down across from Mrs. Harris, trying to maintain her composure. "What's going on, Mrs. Harris?" she asked, her voice steady but betraying the nerves she felt. "Mrs." Harris folded her hands in front of her. "I've been informed that there was an incident yesterday. You approached one of our guests, Mr. Keanu Reeves, and asked him for an autograph." Maria's eyes widened in surprise. "Yes, I did," she said, her voice quiet. "But it was just a quick request. I've admired him for years, and when I saw him, I couldn't help but ask." "I understand that you may have been excited, Maria," Mrs. Harris said, her voice colder now. "But you've violated company policy. We don't approach guests like that, especially not celebrities. You should have known better." Maria felt a wave of confusion wash over her. "But he didn't mind. He was kind and even gave me the autograph. He wasn't upset," she explained, trying to make sense of the situation. Mrs. Harris shook her head. It doesn't matter whether he minded or not. It's about maintaining the professionalism of this hotel. We can't have employees making personal requests of our guests. It's inappropriate. Maria was stunned. She had never imagined that something as simple as asking for an autograph could result in this kind of response. It was just a small gesture, one that didn't seem to have caused any harm. But here she was, sitting in front of her boss, being reprimanded for something that felt harmless. "I didn't mean any harm," Maria said softly, her voice shaking now. I thought it would be okay." Mrs. Harris's face hardened. "Well, it's not. I'm afraid this has to be dealt with accordingly. We take guest privacy and professionalism very seriously here. Your actions have put the hotel's reputation at risk." Maria's heart was pounding now, her chest tightening as she tried to process what was happening. She had been working here for years, always putting in the effort, always doing her best. She had never once been in trouble, but now, over something as simple as an autograph, she was being told she had violated company policy. "I'm sorry, Maria, but I have to let you go," Mrs. Harris said, her voice final. "Your actions were inappropriate and I can't overlook them. You're dismissed from your position." Maria felt the room spinning. Her hands shook as she stood up from her chair, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. She had worked so hard for this job, and now it was all slipping away. She had no idea what had just happened or how she had gotten to this point. I don't understand," Maria said, her voice cracking. "It was just an autograph. Why is this happening?" Mrs. Harris didn't answer. She simply nodded and motioned for Maria to leave the office. "I'm sorry, but the decision is final. Please collect your things." As Maria walked out of the office, she felt the eyes of her coworkers on her. She could hear the whispers growing louder as she passed them. Everyone had seen what had happened, and now they were all talking about her. The humiliation was unbearable. She had never felt so small in her entire life. She made her way to the break room to gather her belongings, her mind still racing. She tried to make sense of what had just happened, but it felt impossible. All she had wanted was to meet someone she admired, and now she had lost everything because of it. How had something so simple turned into such a disaster? With shaking hands, she packed up her things and left the hotel. The cold air outside hit her like a slap, but it did little to numb the pain she was feeling. She had lost her job, and for what? A moment of excitement, a simple request for an autograph. She had never imagined things could turn out like this. As Maria walked away from the hotel, she felt a sense of disbelief. She couldn't help but wonder if she had done something wrong. Had she crossed a line? But in her heart, she knew she had just made a simple request. She hadn't meant any harm, and yet here she was, jobless and defeated. It was only later, after hearing the news from a friend that Keanu Reeves had expressed shock and disappointment over her firing, that Maria started to understand. What had happened to her wasn't just about an autograph. It was about the misunderstanding, the overreaction, and the failure to see the bigger picture. But at that moment, as she walked down the street, all Maria could feel was the sting of loss and the uncertainty of what would come next. The days following her dismissal felt like a blur to Maria. Everything around her seemed to spin out of control, and the familiar world she had known at the hotel seemed like a distant memory. She had walked out of the hotel in a daze, unable to grasp what had just happened. The shock of losing her job over something so trivial consumed her thoughts. It wasn't just the loss of income, it was the loss of her sense of purpose. For years, Maria had worked tirelessly, always doing her best and keeping a low profile. She never expected anything extraordinary in return, just the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. But now she felt like she had been punished for something she didn't even understand. An autograph. Was it really that big of a deal? In the days that followed, Maria stayed at home, replaying the events over and over in her head. She had been dismissed by her manager, Mrs. Harris, who had been so cold and impersonal in their meeting. It felt like an overwhelming injustice, especially when she had tried to explain herself. But no matter what she said, the decision had been made. She stayed in bed for most of the first day, her mind clouded by the weight of what had happened. But eventually she forced herself to get up. She needed to do something, anything, to stop the spiral of self-doubt. She decided to go for a walk in the park, hoping the fresh air would clear her mind. As she walked through the quiet streets, her thoughts turned to her family. She had always tried to provide for them, to make sure they didn't want for anything. Now, she worried about what her next steps would be. She didn't have a backup plan, no immediate options on the table. She had worked in the hotel industry for so long that she didn't know what else she could do. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from a friend, Carmen, one of her coworkers from the hotel. The message was simple. "Maria, you won't believe this, but I heard Keanu Reeves knows about what happened to you. He's shocked and upset. He's even said something about helping you." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Could it really be true? She stared at the message for a moment, unsure if she should believe it. Why would Keanu Reeves care? He was a celebrity with his own life to deal with. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. Keanu had always been known for his kindness, for going out of his way to do good for others. Maybe this wasn't just a random act of kindness. Maybe it was something more. Still, Maria couldn't bring herself to get her hopes up. She had already been through so much disappointment. But as the hours passed, the message from Carmen stayed on her mind. What if Keanu really did care? What if he could help? Later that day, Maria sat down at her kitchen table with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. It was from the hotel. It seemed odd to receive communication from them after everything that had happened, but she opened it, curious. To her surprise, it wasn't a formal letter of termination or any kind of apology. Instead, it was a letter of apology for how the situation had been handled. The email began with a brief acknowledgement of the misunderstanding and the miscommunication that had taken place. It went on to say that the hotel management had reviewed the situation and concluded that Maria's dismissal was an overreaction. The email continued, stating that they would be offering her the chance to return to her position if she so wished, and that they were taking steps to ensure this would never happen again. Maria blinked, rereading the email several times to make sure she wasn't imagining things. The hotel wanted her back. After everything, it felt too good to be true, but there it was in black and white. They were offering her job back, and it was clear that they had realized their mistake. Her heart swelled with a mixture of relief and confusion. What had changed? Was it the apology from the hotel, or was it something else? Could it really be Keanu's involvement? Could he have said something to them? Maria couldn't be sure, but the timing was too uncanny to ignore. Maria thought about it for a long time. She could go back to the hotel, return to her old life, and continue doing what she had always done. Or she could leave it all behind and find a new path. The offer was tempting, especially now that she had a second chance. But a small part of her couldn't shake the feeling that the whole ordeal had left a mark on her. What if things were never the same again? What if the same kind of misunderstanding happened again in the future? The next morning, Maria made up her mind. She would go to the hotel, but she wasn't going to jump back into the same routine without understanding why things had played out the way they did. She needed answers. When she arrived at the hotel, she was greeted by the same familiar faces. The front desk clerk, who had always been friendly, smiled warmly at her. It felt strange to be here again after everything that had happened, but she pushed her discomfort aside and walked toward the manager's office. When Mrs. Harris saw her walk in, she looked a little taken aback. "Maria, I didn't expect you to come back so soon." Maria nodded, keeping her voice calm. "I've come to talk. I need to understand what happened, why I was fired, and what has changed since then." Mrs. Harris hesitated for a moment, then motioned for Maria to sit. "I'm sorry for the way things were handled. The situation was blown out of proportion. We didn't fully understand the context of what happened. I should have spoken to you first instead of jumping to conclusions." Maria's eyes widened. "So this wasn't just about the autograph?" "No," Mrs. Harris said, her voice softening. "It was about the way we handled the situation. It was a misunderstanding. And when we heard that Keanu himself was upset by how things went, it became clear that we had made a mistake. The truth is, we should have shown more understanding." Maria's mind raced. Keanu had spoken out. This was more than she could have hoped for. So it was Keanu. Mrs. Harris nodded. "Yes, he personally reached out to the hotel and made it clear that he was disappointed in the way the situation had been handled. He didn't think you should have been fired. We are truly sorry for what happened, and we want to make it right." Maria's chest tightened, but this time it wasn't with anger or frustration. It was with gratitude. Keanu had done more than just give her an autograph. He had spoken up on her behalf, and that was something she would never forget. With a deep breath, Maria made her decision. "I'll take the job back," she said, her voice steady. "But only if things are truly different. I don't want to be a part of a system where misunderstandings like this happen again." Mrs. Harris nodded. Of course, Maria, will make sure nothing like this ever happens again. As Maria walked out of the office, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. Things weren't perfect, but they were moving in the right direction. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she knew that with Keanu's support, she was stronger than before. The days following Maria's decision to return to the hotel were filled with mixed emotions. She had chosen to give the hotel another chance, but the experience of being fired for something so trivial still weighed heavily on her mind. She wasn't sure if she could ever fully trust the system again, but she hoped that things would be different this time. The hotel had promised to make changes, and she wanted to see if they would keep their word. Her first day back was filled with a mix of familiar faces and awkward encounters. Some of her coworkers greeted her warmly, apologizing for the way things had gone down. Others, however, seemed unsure of how to act around her. Maria had always kept to herself at work, and now that she had been in the spotlight, things felt different. The atmosphere in the hotel seemed to have changed, and she wasn't sure if that was for the better or worse. As Maria walked through the hallways, she found herself thinking about the events that had led to this point. Her mind often wandered back to that fateful day when she had asked Keanu Reeves for an autograph. She had been so nervous, but in the end, it had been a simple, harmless request. The way things had spiraled out of control after that still didn't make sense to her. But now, with Keanu's involvement, everything had changed. Keanu's public support for her had been a complete surprise. She hadn't expected him to take any action at all, let alone speak out on her behalf. He didn't owe her anything, yet he had done more for her than anyone else. Maria couldn't help but feel grateful to him, not just for the autograph, but for showing kindness and compassion in a way that few people ever did. She had always admired his humility and warmth, and now those qualities felt even more real to her. But despite the reassurance from Keanu and the hotel's apology, Maria couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. The hotel had been quick to reinstate her, but she wasn't sure if they truly understood the impact of their actions. The apology had been swift, but it felt like they were simply trying to fix a mistake rather than addressing the deeper issues at play. It wasn't just about getting her job back. It was about how the system treated people like her, people who didn't have the same power or voice as the guests they served. As she pushed those thoughts aside, Maria focused on the task at hand. She had been assigned to clean a suite on the top floor of the hotel, a room that was often reserved for VIP guests. She had cleaned this room countless times before, but today felt different. There was an unfamiliar energy in the air, something that made the space feel colder, more distant. She couldn't help but wonder if the higher-ups at the hotel were still watching her every move, waiting for her to slip up again. The suite was beautifully decorated, with large windows that overlooked the city. The furniture was modern yet elegant, and everything had a sense of luxury to it. Maria started her cleaning routine, dusting off the shelves and making sure every surface was spotless. As she worked, she couldn't help but notice the silence. The suite was empty, and the quiet seemed to echo in her ears. She was just finishing up when the door suddenly opened, and a familiar voice greeted her. Maria turned around to see the hotel manager, Mrs. Harris, standing in the doorway. She hadn't expected to see her today, and the sight of her instantly made Maria feel uneasy. Mrs. Harris looked apologetic, but there was still a sense of distance between them. "Maria," Mrs. Harris said, her voice soft. "I just wanted to check in with you. How are you feeling?" Maria paused, trying to gather her thoughts. She hadn't expected to be asked that question, and the honesty in Mrs. Harris's tone caught her off guard. "I'm doing okay," Maria replied cautiously. "It's been a little strange coming back, but I'm managing." "I understand," Mrs. Harris said, nodding. "I want to apologize again for what happened. I know it was unfair to you, and I hope you know that we truly value your work here. I'll be making sure that nothing like this happens again." Maria looked at Mrs. Harris, her eyes searching for sincerity. She could see that the manager was trying to make amends, but Maria wasn't sure if it was enough. She didn't want to hold a grudge, but the experience had left a mark on her. "Thank you for saying that," Maria said, her voice steady. "I appreciate it, but I still have some questions. I don't know if I can just forget what happened." "I understand completely," Mrs. Harris said, "and I'm here to listen, Maria. If there's anything you need to talk about, I'm all ears." Maria felt a small weight lift off her shoulders as she heard Mrs. Harris's words. She had never been one to speak up, but now she felt like she had a chance to be heard. Maybe things wouldn't be perfect right away, but at least there was a willingness to change. And that, Maria realized, was the first step toward healing. After their conversation, Maria returned to her cleaning duties, but something had shifted. It wasn't just the hotel's apology or Keanu's kind words that made a difference. It was the realization that she had a voice, that she wasn't just another nameless employee. She had been treated unfairly, but she wasn't powerless. And as she finished up her work, she felt a sense of pride in herself. She had made it through one of the hardest moments of her life, and she was stronger for it. The next few weeks passed in a blur. Maria settled back into her routine, but she couldn't help but notice the subtle changes around her. Some of her coworkers were more supportive, offering kind words and small gestures of solidarity. It was as though they had seen her struggle and were now rooting for her success. The hotel's management also seemed to be taking extra steps to ensure that their staff was treated fairly and respectfully. Maria still had moments of doubt. There were days when she wondered if she had made the right decision by returning to the hotel. But each time she faced those thoughts, she reminded herself of the bigger picture. This was a chance for her to prove to herself that she could rise above the negativity and keep moving forward. Then one afternoon, as Maria was cleaning another suite, something unexpected happened. The door opened, and there, standing in the doorway, was Keanu Reeves. Maria's heart skipped a beat. It had been a few weeks since the autograph incident, and she hadn't seen him since that day. He was dressed casually, wearing a jacket and jeans, and his presence immediately brought a sense of calm to the room. "Hello, Maria," Keanu said, offering a warm smile. "I hope everything is going well for you." Maria was taken aback. She hadn't expected to see him again, and certainly not in such an intimate setting. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice shaking slightly, It's great to see you again." "I just wanted to check in," Keanu said, his tone genuine. "I heard about what happened and I wanted to make sure you're doing okay." Maria was overwhelmed by his kindness. I'm doing better, thank you for asking." Keanu nodded, his expression soft. "You deserve to be treated with respect, Maria. I'm glad to hear things are improving." Maria smiled, feeling a sense of warmth in her chest. In that moment, she realized that Keanu's support had meant more to her than just a signature. It had been a reminder that kindness and empathy still existed in the world, and that made all the difference. As Keanu left the room, Maria felt a renewed sense of hope. Things weren't perfect, but they were getting better. And that was all she could ask for. The days continued to pass, and while Maria felt like she was slowly finding her footing again, the road to feeling truly settled was a long one. The hotel was changing, and Maria could sense it. There was a new air of openness, a desire to correct past mistakes, but it wasn't easy for her to trust so quickly. The sting of being dismissed over something as harmless as asking for an autograph still lingered in her mind. Keanu's support had been a light in a very dark time for Maria. His kindness had meant more to her than she could put into words. It wasn't just the gesture of signing the autograph. It was the fact that someone who didn't even know her had cared enough to speak out, to make sure she wasn't forgotten in the face of an unfair situation. It was rare to find such genuine kindness, especially in a world where people often overlooked those they thought were insignificant. But even with Keanu's kindness, the deeper feelings of frustration and doubt didn't disappear overnight. Maria had learned to put on a brave face, to keep going because she had no other choice, but inside, she still questioned the way the hotel had treated her. The apology from management was a step in the right direction, but it didn't undo the damage that had been done. She wasn't sure if she could ever fully trust them again. As the weeks wore on, things slowly began to improve. Maria found herself getting back into her routine, but this time she wasn't just going through the motions. She had a sense of purpose now, a sense of pride in her work that had been shaken but not broken. The hotel had made an effort to improve, to show their commitment to treating their employees better. They had instituted new training programs, focusing on communication and respect, and there was an overall shift toward making sure every staff member felt valued, not just the guests. Maria noticed the change, and while it wasn't perfect, it was progress. Her coworkers, too, seemed to be taking the new approach to heart. The whispers that had once followed her wherever she went slowly began to fade. People were beginning to see her as more than just the girl who had asked for an autograph. They saw her as someone who had endured and persevered, someone who had been wronged but had chosen to rise above it. One day, As Maria was working, she was approached by one of the hotel's supervisors, a woman named Jenna. Maria had always respected Jenna for her professionalism and kind demeanor, and she was surprised when Jenna called her aside for a private conversation. "Maria, I just wanted to say how much I admire the way you've handled everything that's happened," Jenna began. "I know it hasn't been easy, and I know the whole situation was unfair to you, but you've come back to work with such strength and grace. You've been an example for all of us." Maria was taken aback. She hadn't expected such praise, and for a moment she wasn't sure how to respond. "Thank you, Jenna," Maria said quietly. "It's been a tough time, but I'm just trying to do my job and move forward." "I can see that," Jenna continued. "And I want you to know that you're making a difference here. Your resilience hasn't gone unnoticed. If there's ever anything you need, don't hesitate to come to me." Maria felt a warm glow spread through her chest. She hadn't expected such kindness from her colleagues, especially after everything that had happened. It felt like the hotel was starting to live up to its promises, and for the first time in weeks, Maria felt a small sense of hope begin to blossom again. That evening, as she walked home after her shift, Maria thought about how far she had come. It hadn't been an easy journey, but she had learned so much along the way. She had learned the importance of standing up for herself, of knowing her worth even when others tried to diminish it. She had learned that sometimes people make mistakes, but that didn't mean they couldn't change. The next day, when Maria returned to work, she was greeted with even more warmth than usual. A few of her coworkers had gathered in the break room, and they all smiled at her as she walked in. Carmen, the friend who had first sent her the message about Keanu's support, waved her over. "We're all going out for lunch after our shift today," Carmen said with a grin. "We wanted you to join us." It's a small celebration, just a way of saying thank you for being such a great example for all of us. Maria was touched. She had never thought of herself as a role model, but it seemed that her strength and perseverance had made an impression on those around her. She felt a sense of pride she hadn't felt in a long time. After her shift, Maria joined her coworkers for lunch at a small cafe near the hotel. As they sat together, sharing stories and laughter, Maria couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in the last few months. She had gone from feeling lost and humiliated to being surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. It felt like a new chapter in her life, one where she wasn't just a cleaner or an employee. She was a person, someone who mattered, someone who had value beyond what she did for a living. As the afternoon wore on, Maria found herself feeling more hopeful than she had in a long time. She knew that things wouldn't always be easy, and that challenges would continue to come her way. But she also knew that she had the strength to face them head-on. She had proven that to herself, and she had learned that sometimes, the most unexpected sources of support could help you find your way when you were lost. The next day, as Maria walked through the hotel lobby, she noticed a new level of respect in the way the guests and staff interacted. There was a sense of equality, of mutual respect, that hadn't been there before. Maria realized that the hotel had truly changed, and so had she. She had come back from the brink of a difficult situation, and she had come out stronger and more confident than before. As she continued to work at the hotel, Maria knew that her journey wasn't over. There would still be obstacles to overcome, still moments of doubt. But with each day, she felt more certain of her place in the world. She wasn't just an employee, she was someone who had fought for herself, for her dignity, and had won. And that was something no one could ever take away from her. And in the back of her mind, Maria knew that she would never forget Keanu's kindness. It was a reminder that, even in a world that could sometimes seem cold and uncaring, there were still people who would stand up for what was right. His gesture had changed her life in ways she couldn't fully explain, and she would always be grateful to him for that. As time passed, Maria slowly began to adjust to her new reality at the hotel. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than it had been. The hotel had made efforts to improve the work environment, and while some changes were more visible than others, Maria could feel a shift in the way people treated each other. There was more understanding now, more empathy. The staff seemed to be working together more as a team, and there was a sense of respect that hadn't been there before. For the first time in a long while, Maria felt like she was truly a part of something. Though the experience of being fired over an innocent request for an autograph still lingered in the back of her mind, Maria had learned something important from it. She had the power to control her response to adversity. The pain of the situation had started to fade, replaced by the realization that she could rise above the challenges life threw her way. She no longer saw herself as just a cleaner. She saw herself as someone who was capable of standing up for what was right, of fighting for herself when no one else would. But as Maria found her confidence again, she also found that her life was beginning to change in unexpected ways. She was no longer just working at the hotel to get by. She was working with a sense of purpose, of pride. Her colleagues treated her differently now, and she found herself taking on more responsibilities. Maria had always been content to quietly do her job and go unnoticed, but now she was being recognized for her dedication and her strength. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when Maria was asked to meet with the hotel's general manager, Mr. Thompson. She had heard his name before, but they had never spoken directly. He was the type of manager who always seemed busy, moving from one meeting to another, overseeing everything from operations to guest relations. When his secretary called to ask if Maria could meet him in his office, she was nervous. She had no idea what the meeting was about, but the fact that it was with the general manager made her anxious. She straightened her uniform, took a deep breath, and walked to his office. When she arrived, Mr. Thompson greeted her with a warm smile and motioned for her to sit. "Maria, thank you for coming in," he said, his voice calm and measured. "I wanted to take a moment to personally thank you for your dedication to the hotel, especially after everything that happened. Your professionalism has been noted, and I wanted to express my appreciation." Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had always worked hard to do her best, but hearing it from someone in charge made it feel more meaningful. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I've just been trying to do my job like always." Mr. Thompson smiled again. "And you've done more than just your job. You've been an example to the entire team. We've been working on making changes here, and you've played a role in that. Your resilience, your ability to return and keep working with such integrity, it's inspiring." Maria was surprised. She hadn't thought about it in those terms before. She had simply returned to work because she needed the job, and because she didn't want to let the negative experience define her. But now, hearing his words, she realized that her actions had been noticed. She had made a difference, not just for herself, but for the hotel as well. "I want to offer you something," Mr. Thompson continued. "We've been talking about ways to recognize employees who go above and beyond, and I think it's time we put that into practice. I'd like to offer you a position as a supervisor in the housekeeping department. This would come with more responsibility, of course, but I believe you're ready for it." Maria's heart skipped a beat. A supervisor position. She had never even imagined that she could be in such a role. She had always thought of herself as just another employee, quietly going about her work. But now, the hotel was offering her a chance to take on more, to grow, to lead. I don't know what to say," Maria said, her voice shaky with disbelief. "I never thought something like this would happen. I've always just done my best, but I never expected." Mr. Thompson cut her off gently. "You've earned this. I know it's a big step, but I believe in you, Maria, and I think this hotel would benefit from having someone like you in a leadership role." Maria sat in stunned silence for a moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. She had spent so many years just trying to get by, trying to make a living, that she had never allowed herself to dream about anything beyond that. But now, here was an opportunity to do something more, to challenge herself in a way she hadn't before. "I'm honored, Mr. Thompson," Maria said, finally finding her voice. "I'll do my best to live up to the trust you've placed in me." Mr. Thompson nodded. "I know you will. You've already shown what kind of person you are. I think you'll do great in this new role." As Maria left his office, her mind was buzzing with excitement. She had just been offered a promotion, something she had never thought possible. It was a huge step forward, not just in her career, but in her life. It was proof that, despite everything that had happened, she was capable of more than she had ever believed. That evening, as she walked home from work, Maria couldn't stop smiling. She thought about how far she had come, how much she had grown over the past few months. The person who had walked into the hotel that first day after being fired was not the same person who was walking home now. She was stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever before. Her thoughts drifted back to Keanu. She hadn't seen him in a while, but his impact on her life was still clear. His kindness had been the spark that had helped her find her strength, and she would never forget the way he had stood up for her. She didn't need his autograph anymore. What he had given her was far more valuable than that. He had given her the belief that she could overcome anything. Maria knew there would still be challenges ahead. Life was never perfect, and there would always be obstacles to face. But now, she felt ready for them. She had proven to herself that she could handle whatever came her way. And with that newfound confidence, Maria was excited to see where this next chapter of her life would take her.